Yellowjackets has left us on a bit of a cliffhanger this week, with things getting really interesting at the end of episode 205, with Shauna going into labor in the 1996 timeline, and in current day, it looks as though the adult Yellowjackets are about to have their first reunion in 25 years. We've got a lot to talk about this week, as there was some little bits of gold dropped in this week's episode. We're going to be going over everything you may have missed and also the latest theories. So let's get right into it. The first thing I wanted to talk about was something you may have missed, as I only picked this up because I watch everything with the subtitles on. And this was in the scene where Van is trying to coax Javi into speaking, and Van is asking Travis for some help, and he kind of shoots her down. And just after Travis kind of says Javi will speak whenever he feels like it, Akila in the background asks Javi, where did you get this queen card from? It's really faint, and again, I only saw this because of the subtitles.
Yeah, maybe you could help here.
He'll talk when he's ready.
Hey, Javi, where'd you find that queen card?
I guess we have our answer to why was there no queen cards in season 1, and now we know that definitely the queen card played some sort of relevance. I think that's how they're choosing people to die, and it seems as though Javi has brought this card back. Does this have something to do with his friend? And I'll talk about Javi's friend and the drawing in a little minute. Two little things I wanted to point out in Van's store. I mean, I could talk about things in there all day. I love little Easter eggs like that, but I'm sure a lot of people have been talking about that. One, I just wanted to say is the Alive VHS that's on the staircase was a nice touch, because Alive is actually based on a true story about a plane crash where they had to resort to cannibalism. It is a really interesting story, and they actually ended up getting out of their situation because two of them walked pretty much to civilization, and they did end up being stuck in a place very similar to where the Yellowjackets are, like absolutely freezing, you know, snow. People perished in avalanches, and a lot of people perished in the actual plane crash. It was a rugby team as opposed to a soccer team, but very, very similar. And I strongly recommend, there's an episode of You're Wrong About the podcast if you wanted to kind of get everything about that story in a nutshell. The second thing I wanted to point out was the absolute iconic poster that is in Van's store of Jennifer Beals. It is a Flashdance poster, which ties in with obviously the 80s, 90s theme in Van's store. And I'm sure most people watching this channel know this, but Jennifer Beals, of course, is Bet Porter in The L Word. And I'm going to be very confident in saying I'm sure adult Van would be a big fan of The L Word. So I think this poster is a bit of a double meaning. Next up, I wanted to talk about Nat and Lottie's scene whenever Nat is kind of being hypnotized by Lottie and going into the past when she had that OD. I did find it a bit odd that they were administering Narcan, because Narcan is for reversing opioid OD, which would be something like the substance Van is taking, but the thing that Nat normally takes, and exactly what we're shown in the Travis and Nat scene, it's something that's on my shirt right now. I have to be really careful with what you say on YouTube, but we know that Nat doesn't have a problem with opioids. It's that other substance. So Narcan can't reverse that, but I'm sure that's just like a little mistake or something, but I don't want to be too nitpicky, obviously. So when Lottie and Nat are having that scene, Nat kind of has this vision, flashback, premonition, something, that she sees the Antler Queen in kind of the wreckage of the plane, and she's talking about, we didn't make it. I mean, I'm thinking that there's some sort of metaphor there, and that their innocence and who they were going to be kind of died in the plane crash, because they never got to be the people they were supposed to be, because they had this extremely traumatic event. And I mean, that kind of is Yellowjackets in a word, isn't it? Trauma. Because I do notice this kind of divide between the Yellowjacket viewers, in the sense that there's people that either think everything is supernatural or everything is trauma. trauma. I do tend to err on the trauma side a little bit. But in that scene also, we do see Nat as the Antler Queen, and you can't quite tell when the Antler Queen is kind of walking down the plane, but there is this it's not even 0.1 second. I pulled the frame out in my editing software and it's 0.6 of a second, this flash, and it is Nat underneath the veil of the Antler Queen, and her eyes are like completely black. I did mention this a few videos ago. I can't remember exactly which one, but I have been talking about the fact that the Antler Queen is something we named this figure, this person, and it wasn't something that they made on the show. I think they were calling the character the Oracle before, so I am more erring on the side of the Antler Queen changes or just is kind of all of them in a way, because I don't think it's a particular person anymore, just the way they're putting the antlers behind everyone, and kind of just based on this thing that the Antler Queen is something the fans made up. So I think that we're gonna get a little more of a look at that, about the fact that they are all kind of guilty of the Antler Queen sins. And also every time something happens with Nat and like darkness or anything like that, I just think about that scene in season 1 where Shauna and Ty are in the van and they kind of say, we wouldn't be here without Nat.
We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for her. So I do what I can, not just for her, for me. The fuck took you so long?
They are alluding certainly to, I feel like, a certain one event or something that happened that was very much how they either survived or were rescued or something like that. I don't think they're just alluding to like, oh, Nat would go out and hunt. I think it's a very particular event. So maybe everything is related to that. Maybe there was one decision or one moment or something where Nat made a decision and it led them down the path of the Antler Queen. Or it could be just a split-second decision that she made that got them rescued, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. Before we talk about Javi and his friend, I did just want to talk about another theory that I have, and this isn't actually based on the episode, it's just based on the trailers and teasers. I go back through them like every week and obsessively frame by frame go through them, and this scene where we have the Yellowjackets like carrying someone on a spike, I have a thought about who it could be. The one other thing to say is last week I was talking about someone that was in the ice and in the lake that wasn't the scene that we saw with Nat and the moose, and I was saying about how Crystal is the person that wears those like reddy maroony gloves. I did notice that actually at the very end of the trailer when they're carrying the person on the spike, Misty is wearing those gloves now. So did Misty go back, find Crystal, consciously take the gloves, or is it just they're swapping around, winter clothes and they didn't make the connection that Crystal was the last person wearing those gloves basically. So I'm assuming they go back and retrieve Crystal's body, and when they're carrying the person on the stake, before that in the trailer, I'll put the trailer in here, you can see them all running with the weapons. We all know that scene in the long trailer, and you can actually see a lot of their feet, and you can match up other points in the trailer where they're all dressed exactly the same, like they all look identical, so we know that's part of those scenes. And the character of Melissa is in the back and she's wearing Converse, and then also if you look really closely when they're carrying the stake, like it's just behind Van, you can see that the arms are also obviously the person, like if this is the stake, like the person's feet are tied up that way and then their arms are tied up that way. It looks like Ty is here and Van is here. So you can see just a tiny bit of their arm, and it's a dark top exactly the same way, or dark jacket exactly the same color as Melissa is wearing, and she has like brown pants on. So it looks to me that that matches up with her. I know that they're going and attacking someone outwardly, and there's no Javi, Travis, or Coach Ben there. So it could be Javi wears Converse and stuff too. And I know they switch those things around, but that is just what I was thinking. One other thing to point out, I don't quite know what this means yet, is that when Crystal passes away and falls down that gorge or cliff, there is Misty breaking off like the stick just before it happens. And I really think this is where Ty nearly fell off that gorge, and therefore we know the symbol is on that tree right there, because there's a similar like spiky little stick plant there, and they just seem to really focus on Misty breaking off that little branch, and it just seems to line up with some other things. It also looks like there's a stump there too. I also was thinking maybe there was something with Shauna going into labor and the whole Crystal passing away, because all of a sudden, you know, the storm came in. So I was thinking there was some sort of connection there, but with Crystal being near the symbol, I wonder if any of that will kind of match up or mean anything, because the next episode, episode 6, which is actually not this week, it's going to be next week on May 5th, it is titled Qui, which is who in French. And we know whenever they had the whole seance thing in season 1, that's when Lottie had that whole speaking in French, and we know the whole it wants blood. Is this who wants blood? So we'll have to wait and see what happens there. Also, when I was pulling the seance clip to like put in while I was talking, so you guys just don't have to look at me, I did just rewatch a bit of that scene, and they were talking about, was it 8 that the sort of little thing was making in the air, or was it an infinity symbol?
Are we all gonna die out here?
Okay, 8. What's that supposed to mean?
It's not an 8, it's an infinity.
And I'm thinking that 8 referred to the survivors, because we do know now that there are 8 survivors, and we know it's the 6 Yellowjackets and Travis. So who is the other remaining survivor? That's the question. I wonder if we're going to find out like maybe at the end of this season, or maybe someone else is going to show up before then. I'm really looking forward to seeing who the other survivor is, and I hope we do find out this season. So finally, just to discuss Javi and his friend. So the little drawing, if you actually zoom in like where the roots of the trees are, you can see there's a woman there, and I kind of am going back and forth with, is this, again, it's the question of the show, like, is this supernatural? Is there an explanation for this?
She told me not to come back. Who did? My friend.
Because you have Ty, who obviously is not in control of their actions 100% of the time. So Ty could have been helping him in some way. And then you have Lottie, who I think sometimes there is like a little look going on between them. But again, that could be completely innocent. So is it actually just someone who's in the group? Is there someone else out there? Again, we do know that there's that scene coming up where they're like charging out at people with weapons, but is it something that's in his imagination? I'm assuming this with Javi and this drawing and this person is all going to tie in with the mossy tree stumps and, you know, the melting snow, but I'm sure there's something there, and maybe we just don't have all the pieces yet, because next episode, episode 6, is supposed to be the big one. I mean, obviously we know Shauna's just gone into labor, and then it looks as though we're getting all of our Yellowjackets having a reunion at Lottie's compound, which I'm really, really excited to see. We also know that Shauna is going to be interrogated, or at least interviewed by the police this episode. So I'm sure they're going to set a lot of things in motion in this episode. And I know that there's been a lot of discussion about how things are going to go from bad to worse in the last couple of episodes. So I'm really excited to see where we go from here. As I said, there is there's no new episode this week. If anything else happens, like there's another trailer or something like that, I might do another video, or if I have, you know, a light bulb moment about what's going on. But otherwise, I will do a video next week after the new episode. I will be trying to get these videos out much closer to the streaming release of the episodes on Fridays. I just have another channel where some stuff's been happening. So if you like frauds, cults, and scams, check that other channel out. I'll link it down below and in the cards above. And I hope that you'll leave your best theories down below. As always, make sure to stay safe, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.